Hi, I'm Sarah Doremus, and I was going to teach a class at Eureka Springs in October called Point of View Pins or Brooches with an Attitude. And it was a class to teach you various techniques in metalsmithing so that you can make a brooch that would express a point of view, something you wanted to say. And the goal of the class was to learn a whole bunch of different kinds of techniques in your jewelry making. But with COVID, it's not going to happen. So I was asked to make a very short video on something that I like to do. So I've decided that I'm going to show you how to make a tin can automata. So I have this little thank you card that I made for a friend of mine. And there's a little hand on the top that has a sign that says thank you for all that you do. And it's on a baluster that I pulled out of the dump, a wooden one that I glued it on. So you can see it's a little crank toy thank you card. And if you look at the back, you can see the mechanism that we're going to make. So I'm going to start by showing you, you can use any kind of can. You can use an Altoid tin, you can use an anchovy tin, you can use a soup can, whatever. But I'm going to show you using an anchovy tin because it's easy to show you because it doesn't have a back. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make two holes across the can that are parallel to one another and exactly across so that you have a place for your crank. So you can use a drill. I have these pliers that have a little, they're hole punching pliers. So I'm going to punch a hole here. There we go. And I'm going to get a piece of spring wire, which is, you'll need some spring wire. You can get that at the hardware store. You just ask them for spring wire. And you can, I'm going to put this directly across and figure out where it is that it needs to have the other hole punched. So I see it's right there, and I'm going to punch another hole. Boop, there we go. Now, the other and I punch the holes near the outer edge because when the crank goes around, I don't want it to catch on the front of the can. Now, the next thing, I'm going to punch a hole directly in the top, and again, toward the back of the can. Now we're going to make the crank. So I have the two holes on either side, and I have the hole in the top. So I'm going to get this piece of spring wire, and I've drawn so that you can see, here is the spring wire. Here's the can that goes up around like this. Here's the wire that's bent with a little crank in it. It goes this way through those two holes. And this wire spins on the crank and it comes out the top, and that's whatever you're going to animate goes on top of that. So the wire, after it's bent, will look like the bottom here. So with that, I'm going to show you how we do this. You're going to take a piece of spring wire, and it's hard to see. And I'm going to take about 2 inches on one side. I'm going to bend it, and I'm bending it to a 90-degree angle. Let me see if I can show you this. Can you see that 90-degree angle? Then I'm going to bend it in the opposite direction, and I'm going to use the width of the jaw of my plier as the guide for how much to bend. So now I've bent it in the other direction. Again, I will show you here. You can see. Now, the tricky part is you can't bend the next bend until you put the arm that goes up and down on it. And the trick about that is if you just have a piece of wire and you just make a little loop in it, it'll work its way around and it'll get caught on the crank. So you need to make on a piece, this is brass wire, and you can use copper or anything. I just happen to have this brass wire, and it's 20 gauge brass wire. So I made this little twist on the top, but before I did that, I needed to have a piece of tube to go on my crank. So I usually use brass tube and solder it, but most people don't have that. So if you take a ballpoint pen and pull it apart and cut off the end of the tube that has the ink in it, you'll get a little tube that works perfectly. I've already cut one, so I'm going to show you. So what I'm going to do is after I cut it and I've made my loop on the end of my wire, I'm going to put the tube into that loop. And with some quick set glue, super glue, I'm going to just glue that in place. Just a little dab will do. There we go. I'm just going to glue it on both sides there. Good. And I'm going to sit that down for a second. So I've done that, but as it happens, I've already done it before. So I have one that the glue is already set on. So I've made the two bends in my crank. Now I'm going to slide my tube with the brass on it. See how it spins easily? Now I'm going to do my next bend. And again, I'm going to use my pliers and I'm going to bend it up to make that 90-degree. So I'm going to get a little bit better. There we go. So I don't know if you can see that. See how it has a bend down, and there's the spinny over up. Now I need to bend it again that way. So I'm going to use my pliers as a guide, and I'm going to bend it there, like so. So you can see this. See how one side's a little larger than the other? I don't really like that, so I'm going to adjust that just a teeny bit. There we go. There. So now you can see, and it spins evenly, although looking at it from the end, it's a little crooked, so I'm going to straighten it out again with my pliers. Okay, now, this is perfect. Now I have my can. I'm going to slide the shorter end through the side, and the brass, I'm going to bend it a little bit and pop it through the hole in the top. You can see there. I pulled it through the hole in the top and one side's in. Now, I have, depending on what side I want to crank, I'll probably crank it on the right because I'm right-handed. So I'm going to cut off, I'm going to leave about maybe 1.5 inches sticking out. I'm going to use a pair of snips, and I'm going to cut my wire. But when I cut it, I'm going to hold the end, because when you cut this kind of wire, it'll fly if you don't hold it, and it could hit someone in the eye. So now I'm going to slightly bend it a little bit because it's spring wire, so it'll spring right back. And I'm going to pop it through that hole. There we go. And then adjust it a little bit and make sure that the crank doesn't hit the back of the can, which it doesn't. So now I'm going to straighten it out just a little bit. There we go. And I see it goes up and down. So now I want to line this up in the center. And with my pliers, I'm going to bend down and then again bend out like that. So now I've made a little hand crank. See how, and this is a little crooked, so let's straighten this out a bit. There we go. So there's my hand crank. And on this side, I'm going to snip this off. And it popped out. So I'm going to snip this off, and then I'm going to just bend this end so it does not fall out like this. There. Okay, so now if you see, I have a little machine that cranks. And if you can see the back, you can see it going up and down. So then you put your message on it. I happen to have a little piece of tape here. I'm going to put it on here like so. And with a sign, And as you can see, Eureka Springs rocks. So there you go. Tin can automata or automata. Okay, thank you. Bye.